Hi, Natania. I've got your question here that you sent. This is really helpful when you can send me your work that you're looking for help with, and then I can see what you're doing, okay? So let's start with our frequency chart. And one thing that I want you to do a little bit differently here is when you're doing your culminating frequency, it's already stated that it's in as a percent. And so you don't want to change it to a decimal. So like this one will be 10%, 25%, and those are the numbers that you're going to use in your calculations as well, okay? So don't put them as a decimal, just put them as the percent that they are, okay? That's 100 there. All right, one other little thing that needs to be changed here is you'll notice in some of the examples that what they write in their chart is things like 5 to under 10, things like that. And so what they mean by that is we can't overlap in our intervals. Like we can't have 10 in two different categories. So this first category can go up from 0 to 9.999999999, you know what I mean. But it can't hit 10, so it's going to go to just under 10. And then the next category is going to start at 10, and it's going to go to just under 20, okay? So you won't actually include 20 in that interval. So if you were looking like you're being asked to find what percentile the 20th score was in, you would only have one interval that you could actually find the number 20 in. So let's get to our question now. And I was referring you back to the lesson for number 6 because in that lesson they have a little chart there and they have outlined for you all of the values, all of the things that are in this formula and what they mean. Okay, so that's why I was sending you back to example 3 to have a look at that. So if we're trying to find the 65th percentile, you're right, we want P65, so we'll fill in X for 65, okay? Now the 65th percentile is going to be in this interval right here, the one with the 70. The reason it's going to be in there is that so far I've got a score of 50% of all of my data here. So the cumulative frequency, I've got 50% of the data accounted for by the end of the interval 20 to 30. If I want the 65th percentile, that means I have to move up to where the 65th percentile will occur, and it's going to occur right here in this line of the chart because this is from the 50th to the 70th percent, and 65% fits in there, right? Okay, so our Lx for that interval is 30. That's the lowest x value. That's this value right here. That's what you're using for Lx. Your interval, your I, is your interval width, and in this case it's 10. Now, you've got a couple more variables in your bracket here. If we look first at your n sub x value from the bracket, the first variable in the bracket, then that's just the total number of pieces of data, I guess, in your sample. And so if you add up your frequency, if you add up all of these guys, the total number of pieces of data, I think, is 40 here, if I added that correctly. And so your n is just 40. That's how many numbers we're looking at for this sample. Now, the sum of Fc, that's the sum of your cumulative frequency, not to be confused with the one on the bottom here in the denominator, which is Fx, which is the frequency in the interval that we're looking at, okay? So I'll show you how to find both of those values. So sum of Fc means the frequency so far. And so for that, what we're going to do is look to the line just above, and that is 50th percentile that we were talking about. We've got 50% of the data accounted for in this line here. So that's where the FC comes from. You read it from the chart, but it's the number just before the line that you're working from in the chart. Now the FX in the denominator, that's the frequency in the group that we're working with in our interval, and so in this case it's 8. So that's how many data pieces you have in this interval, okay? So now that we have all those filled in, you're just going to go back to your formula and be careful to use bedmas here, and you're going to fill in all of those values for all of these variables that we just talked about. And if you're careful, like I said, with your bedmas on your calculator, just kind of press equals after, when you know that it should sort of get a total before it divides or something, just press equals on your calculator to make sure it's doing it right. And then that'll give you the value that is at the 65th percentile. You know it's got to be a value in between 30 and 40 because that's the interval that we're working from. And so if you get a number that's not in between 30 and 40, then you know something's wrong. You can also check at the bottom of the worksheet because the answers are given to you for this assignment there as well.